Joyce Meyer was talking about in her particular devotion for today about going through difficulties. And of course, you would have to be somewhere under a rock or just nowhere exposed to any type of media to not have seen the horrific events that were going on in Houston or in Texas this week from Hurricane Harvey. I joked a little bit last week saying that all of my turtles, that's the only pet I've ever had. The only two pets I've ever had were fish and a turtle and turtles. And all of my turtles, each time I'd get one and it would die, I would name it Harvey. So I think I had 7 or 8 of them over a lifetime in all. And all of them were named Harvey. Well, in any event, the hurricane, this one that came through because they named them alphabetically. As a matter of fact, the one that's coming behind Harvey is Irma. The letter I. So this time for letter H, it was named Harvey. And boy, did Harvey hit. In previous storms, the media had been accused of hyping or over-exaggerating, or they would forecast what the model said, and then the storm would die out, peter out. It didn't do what the forecaster said it was going to do. That was not the case with Harvey. I think, if anything, this is one time they may have understated it, and they didn't even realize it, because Harvey hit and hit hard in terms of the rain, because it was more water damage than wind damage in this one. And sometimes water can be worse than the wind. I don't know. All the elements are bad. So I don't know if any one is any worse than the other, depending on how much of each one you get. So I can't sit here and say water is worse than wind, or wind is worse than fire, or fire is worse than, because they're all equally as bad or good, depending on how much of it you're getting. So in Harvey's case, it dumped more water, they say, in the history of the country. In the history of the United States, Texas received more water than any time other that we've had in our recent history. And when you look on the news and you see the devastation, everybody that I've talked to, I said, I just, in my wildest imagination, can't imagine the feeling and emotions of the people that are involved in it, particularly those who were directly hit. And when I say that, I mean, one of the days whenever I was in China earlier in July, one of the days, matter of fact, it was the day we went to the Great Wall of China. And it rained. I mean, we were in a rainstorm like I had not been in a long time. I mean, and because when you're on a tour like that, you're scheduled to already be whatever the attraction is. You really can't say, well, we're not going today. Not to mention, we were already at the wall whenever the hardest part of the rain came. But during that time, our clothes were soaked. Even though we had umbrellas, even though we had ponchos, clothes were soaked, shoes were soaked, socks were soaked. I mean, just rain all over the place, just wet and soggy. And then we went to the restaurant, we ate lunch, and then we got back on the bus. But the first thing everybody did when we finally got back to the hotel was we had to take our shoes and socks off. And a lot of the people in there would take the dryer at the hotel, and they dried their sneakers or their shoes or whatever. I put mine on the window ledge and just let them dry in the air and the sun, so forth and so on. But my point where I'm going with this is that was just us for that particular time, and we had somewhere to go back to that evening, meaning the hotel. These folks down there were now flooded out of their homes. They had to be retrieved, most of them, many of them, by boat or jet ski or some type of water vehicle. And then they were soaked, because mind you, it was raining while all this rescue was going on. It was still raining, and raining hard. So now back to what I was telling you about how soaked I was on the Great Wall in China. These folks were soaked like that. They were rescued and then taken to a shelter with nothing other than the wet clothes they had on their backs. So they were taken to a shelter. And the next question is, well, what do we do next? Where do we go from here? We have now nothing other than the wet clothes that we have on right now, of which we're going to have to take off because they're wet. And we're going to have to get something, but more importantly, where are we going from here? Where are we going to live? Where all of our possessions are gone. I mean, I've been seeing stories of folks going back into their house with the water still chest high, with furniture floating. their valuables floating out as if, like the little toys, like in the tub, like a rubber duck in the tub. I mean, just devastating. Like I said, in my mind, I cannot wrap around what that must be like. And yet what we saw was folks pulling together, as we always do in these tragedies and these catastrophes. Folks come together for that. And I did a podcast saying, why does it take a disaster for us to pull together like that? Why can't we do that on an everyday basis? Why can't we come together on an everyday basis, love each other, help each other, work with each other the same way that we do when a catastrophe strikes? Because during the podcast, I was sharing, if you think back to 9/11, whenever we had 9/11 in New York, somewhere within those next few days, there was an ecumenical prayer service in Yankee Stadium. Every faith, every color, every ethnic group, religious background, orientation, you name it, they had representation there, and they filled that stadium, and they all prayed in their own way. Whatever their belief system was, they all prayed. And the question I had then that I still have is, why can't we do that on a regular? Maybe if we did more things like that on a regular basis, some of these things might not happen. If we did a Yankee Stadium, everybody come out and pray into your own faith and belief together, maybe the world would get better. Maybe the United States would get better. Maybe the leadership would get better. Maybe a lot of things would get better, because on that particular day, and you can go back and Google it and look it up, but on that particular day, we had everybody. We had the Jewish, we had the Muslims, we had the Christians, we even had the atheists. You had everybody up in Yankee Stadium praying, because those towers were hit and were falling, and folks didn't know what was going to happen next. Same thing in Katrina. Everybody pulled together. Now we see it in Harvey. Everyone pulled together. It didn't matter, black, white, old, young, rich, poor, did not matter. Folks pulled together. But why does it take a catastrophe for us to do that? That's the part I don't get. Also, in that particular podcast I was sharing, we see that same phenomenon during the holidays in December, whether it's Hanukkah or Christmas, Kwanzaa, whatever. For some reason in December, people's spirit, for what they get a lot nicer. Things that they don't do the other 11 months. For some reason in December, they're speaking and holding doors and smiling and laughing. And why can't we do that the other 11 months? Why does that have to be reserved just for December? But going back to Harvey, unbelievable devastation down there, because now they were saying about the water is filled with disease. That when they ran the tests, you had all different kind of viruses such as E. coli and others, deadly viruses in there, that they were saying do not get in that water, because if you have a cut or anything, the tiniest cut on your skin, you can become infected with what's in that water. And they were talking about the tiniest cut could leave you susceptible and open to that flesh-eating disease. In other words, it would get in your system, and all of a sudden your skin would start eating itself. That's what's in that water. That it's you could be. I mean, and for those that are diabetics, and you have to test yourself, and you're constantly like sticking yourself with the little pin. They're talking about an opening even that tiny, something as the pinprick that you do to test your blood sugar level. Something that tiny, if you get it in that water, could open you up to various diseases. That's how bad it is. I mean, they said you had human feces in there, animal feces in there, decaying bodies in there, the fluids from your various automobiles and cars and trucks that were in there. You have toxic chemicals from the plants down there. When I say plants, I'm talking about the corporations, or the what do they call those things? Like the factories. That's when I say plants. I don't want you to get mixed up with the shrubbery, even though that might have something too. But you have so much that's in that water that they're telling you now, do not get in it, because even if you're healthy, you could wind up with that flesh-eating disease. There's crocodiles in there. I mean, if you stay on social media, if you go on the news, you'll learn about it. You'll see it. I saw something on social media where an alligator or a crocodile, whichever way they want to call it, actually now had made its way into one of the houses because it went in there with the water. I saw a shot where a shark was actually in the water on one of the highways. I mean, that's how deep this thing was. Water all over the place. Now, I have an aunt that lives in the Missouri City area. That is right outside of Houston. I actually thought she was further away from Houston than she was. And then whenever I was in contact with her, she said, no, we're only about 15 minutes away from Houston. Luckily, thankfully, prayerfully, were not affected by the floods because where Missouri City sits, I think it's a little higher incline than some of the surrounding areas. So they didn't get hit with floods, but they are impacted because now they can't go anywhere because the roads are all blocked. Supermarkets are empty. Gasoline stations are emptying out. So they're impacted by it, even though their house wasn't destroyed or they didn't get hit with the flood. They're still impacted. I mean, I sit there and I watch. I'm almost like drawn to CNN, even though they're saying the same thing over and over, just to sit there like mesmerized to see how those folks have lost everything. Which leads me into my next point of the gratitude, because I'm at a point now wherein, and I put it on Facebook. Those of you who follow me on Facebook, you will see I go into like themes on Instagram of things that I post. So I go into themes and I find quotes and things that I can post. And once you go into Instagram, you can share Instagram with Facebook. So when I get on one of those rants and themes, I post it on Instagram and I also post it on Facebook. You can do that. The technology allows you to do that. So that whole notion of gratitude, of folks being ungrateful or ingrateful, that's where I am. So here's some of the things that was on there. Sometimes people don't notice the things we do for them until we stop doing them. Never put your time into the hands of the ungrateful. Ungrateful people complain about the one thing you haven't done for them instead of being thankful for the thousands of things you have done for them. Don't invest your time into people who think it's your obligation to cure their ills. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot I only exist when you need something. People push you to your limits, but when you finally explode and fight back, you are the mean one. Now, that's just something that I posted this morning. And like I said, if you go to my Facebook page or Instagram, you will see them there. But that is so true in terms of not showing gratitude. Now, as I said, and I've said it on this show before, I've said it in podcasts before, I've written it in my blog. People don't do things necessarily expecting somebody to say thank you. But if somebody has done something for you, I think the least you can do is tell them thankful and appreciate whatever it is they have done. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, one of my daughters was getting her hair done at the beauty salon. And the beautician, actually, she also in the shop has necklaces, jewelry, I guess, that she creates that she has on sale as well. So as I was waiting for my daughter to get done, I was looking at it, and there was one piece that caught my eye, and then I said, I started to ask her how much it was, so forth and so on. And I said, nah, and I went on out, but the piece stayed on my mind. So my wife and I were on our way to food shopping because she does her hair there as well. And I said, there was a piece in the beauty salon that I really liked, and I didn't ask the young lady about its price or anything, but I really think I want to go back and get it. I said, I tell you, do me a favor. Call her and ask her, how much is it? So my wife called and they got to talking, and the lady says, you know what? You're a loyal, faithful customer. I really like you. I've never done anything from you, because she's from Kenya. She's from Africa. She said, I've never given you anything before. Because my wife explained, she said, well, it was my husband that was in there. He saw it. She said, I'm going to give it to you. That's what she said. I'm going to give it to you. And then when we went, because we went right as soon as we finished food shopping, I went straight there. We went straight to the shop. And when we got there, she pulled two off the rack, gave one to my wife, gave one to me. The one that I had been looking at, it happens to be a arrowhead necklace, and it's from Kenya. She made it from something out of Kenya. And I'm into that kind of stuff. I collect necklaces. I collect bracelets. I collect watches. I collect T-shirts. I collect caps. Those are the things that I'm kind of like into, collect airplanes, so forth and so on. So this one is very special to me, along with the other things that I wear. That's what I was telling you before I went on the mic. I got a few things on around my neck, and they started hitting together. They were making noise, and I didn't want them to interfere on the microphone. I didn't want to hear you. I didn't want you to hear the clinking. The microphones are very sensitive. But my point in the story is she gave them to us. Now, when I leave here, I'm going to get a thank you card. And I'm going to go back there and drop it off to her and let her know how much I appreciate her gesture. I appreciate the necklace, the fact that she was willing to give it. Because interestingly enough, I was listening to a podcast yesterday morning that was talking about giving and receiving. That if somebody is trying to give you something, take it. Give them their opportunity to give. Give them their opportunity to feel good. Because most of us, when we give, as we're giving it, or once we've given it, we feel good because we gave. So they say anytime you don't take something that somebody gave you, or you try to pay them or whatever, you've taken away their opportunity to feel good about giving. I've said another way, someone told me one time, don't block somebody else's blessing when they're trying to give you something. In other words, when no, that's okay. No, I'll pay you. In a sense, you almost block their blessing, because if you think about giving and receiving, it's a circle. It's a cycle. So as you give, folks give to you. Things are given to you, as long as that's not the motivation. As long as your motivation when you give something is not for somebody else to give something to you, because once you do that, you've blocked it. You've blocked it. Once you set out and say, well, I'm going to give this so I can get that, you've messed it up. So long as that's not your motivation, there's a cycle to the giving and the receiving. So I'm going to go back and make sure I give this lady a card and a thank you and a hug and everything, because she didn't have to do that. Because that's the other piece with this gratitude thing. And I know Reverend Clayton, I don't know if he listens to the show or not, but he says this quite frequently, and he are in the same place on terms of ingrates. When first off, people don't have to be nice, and many of them aren't. But when they do choose to be nice, it doesn't necessarily have to be nice to you. So to me, common sense would say, well, that person was nice to me, so therefore let me at least show some gratitude. So where I'm at to the point now is for those folks and I don't care whether they family members, I don't care if it's children, I don't care if it's spouse, I don't care if it's mother, I don't care if it's sister, I don't care who it is. The folks, if they can't begin showing some type of something for what's done to them by me, that's where I'm at with these little memes and quotes and everything. Sometimes people don't notice the things we do for them until we stop doing them. I'm to that point now where I'm stopping doing it. Now, you can't show me any kind of, and I'm not doing it for that reason, but I am not going to sit there and keep being a victim to you being a vampire. You're not going to keep sucking the life out of me. Ungrateful people complain about the one thing you haven't done for them instead of being thankful for the thousands of things you have done for them. Don't invest your time into people who think it's their obligation or it's your obligation to cure their ills. Never put your time into the hands of the ungrateful. Which brings me to my next thing, going back to Houston, because all this ties together. See, this is why I like this hour now, because I can get on here and kind of do like the other ones do, rant. Hopefully you get something out of the ranting. There is no room for any of us to be cocky and to think we're all that in a way wherein, you think you better, because all of these storms and everything else shows us just how quickly God can move. And what I mean by that is some of those homes, most of those homes that I saw on CNN, whenever they were showing what the victims lost, they were nice houses. Some of them might have been considered shacks, depending on what you see as a shack, and I know some of them was in the trailer park or whatever, but some of those houses I saw last night were some very nice houses, and they were underwater. And that happened within an hour or two, certainly maybe a day. But one man on there said it was an hour. So I was standing out here 1 minute and an hour later, everything was floating. So just that quick, things that took years to build, God wiped out in seconds, metaphorically speaking. So we don't have any room to be thinking we all of that, because it don't take nothing to lose everything. It takes absolutely nothing to lose everything that you think you all that and a bag of chips about. You think you something because you got this fine, fancy car. Them cars in Houston are underwater. You think you something because you got this fine, fancy house. Those houses are underwater. You think you something because you had this great job. They can't get to their jobs. You think you something because you had all these nice clothes and jewelry and this and the other. Those clothes and the jewelry is underwater. Just that quickly. So it really does pay us to stay humble. It really does pay us to be thankful and grateful, thankful to God. That's why I said earlier, if you still have life, even in a situation like Houston, as bad as it may seem, if you still have life, there's still hope, because the people really don't have a choice unless they die, unless they just commit suicide or kill themselves. They're going to have to start over again, and it's not going to be easy. They are going to have to start from ground zero. New houses, new furniture, because all of it is ruined with that water. There are not too much, well, like I said, each element has its own. I was going to say it's not too much damage like water damage, but each one has its own way of damaging, whether it's fire, whether it's wind, whether it's water, whether it's whatever. But all of those things that are underwater, they're destroyed, because even when the water dries out, the wood is going to have buckled. There's mold all over the place. They were doing a whole thing on mold last night, where you have to go in there with bleach and water and clean everything down. And even once you clean everything down, it's still going to be buckled. And it's just, oh my God, I can't imagine. But as much as I'm sitting here saying I can't imagine, it could happen. There is no place right now on the planet that cannot get hit by a catastrophe. So you could be up one minute and down the next. Literally, not just figuratively, literally. You can be up at 6:38 and down at 6:39. That's how quickly that's why. So it does not pay us to be walking around here with our nose up, with our heads up, with, looking down on people and thinking we all that, or this nonsense that the KKK and the nationalists and the supremacists and all. How supreme are they? I'll tell you what. I'll bet you the supremacist house was just as much underwater as the people that they claim they so supreme over. Any supremacists in the Houston area, their house went underwater too. If they were in that flood zone, if they were in the area that was flooded, I want to see how supreme they were then. Anybody down there that's a member of the Ku Klux Klan, their house went underwater too. If they were in that area, anybody that's in the Aryan Nation or the nationalists or the whatever they call themselves, if their house was in that area, as supreme as they think they are, their house went underwater too. We don't have room and time for this kind of nonsense. We really don't. We really don't, because it takes absolutely nothing for it to be gone, and you have no control over it whatsoever. Those folks down in that Texas, Houston area where Harvey hit had no control over anything whatsoever.
My name is Diamonds. I am a radio DJ in North Jersey. I broadcast on the frequency of 88.7 FM. I will be on the air every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. when the sun is setting in the sky. If you are out there, if anyone is out there, I can provide music, I can provide entertainment. If there's anybody out there, anybody, please.
Club Melting Pot. Every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Only on WP 88.7 FM Brave New Radio.
Want to expand your horizons? Want to broaden your mind? Well, listen to the only show of its kind. Listen to The Reading Circle.
We bring you what's going on in the world of reading, in the world of books. Sometimes the book may be from 20, 30 years ago, because the thing about books, they are timeless, particularly if there's a good message. And then there are times when we do books that are hot off the press, that were just released.
Listen to The Reading Circle every Saturday morning from 6 a.m.
The Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley.
Only on WP 88.7 FM.
You're listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley on Brave New Radio.
Yes, indeed, you are. Even though we're in the commentary section, you are listening to The Reading Circle. My guest will join me at 7 o'clock. That's Miss Aitza Haddad Nunez, and she's going to be talking about her contribution in the book News Chaser. We've had various guests over the last few weeks. Thanks to my good friend Ayo Sakai. I know her as Denise, but she also has a name, Ayo Sakai. And Ayo has been providing me with some wonderful guests over the last few weeks as we talked about News Chaser, the rhetoric of Trump in essays and commentaries. And Ayitz is going to join us, and she's going to talk to me about, I'm trying to find, oh, there it is, anti-immigration and isolationism. Trump, Latin America, and the future of international law. That's what Ayitz is going to be talking to me about in the 7 o'clock hour. So you make sure, well, if you're listening to me now, make sure you remind somebody that may not be listening to tune in. But I'm glad you're listening to now, and I thank you so much. But again, Ayitz is going to be talking about anti-immigration and isolationism. Trump, Latin America, and the future of international law. Ayitz Haddad, Esquire, PhD. So, as I was saying prior to sharing that information with you with the promo, we don't have room to think we are more than we are. Now, I'm not saying don't love yourself, because I love me some me. I'll be the first to tell anybody that. I love me some me, but I'm talking about a healthy self-esteem, healthy self-love. I'm not talking about being cocky and bragging and thinking you better than somebody else because you have more money, because that money can be taken. Thinking you're better than somebody else because you have a finer house. That house can be taken. Thinking you're better than somebody else because you drive a Porsche or Lamborghini or whatever, because that can be taken. All of the thinking, I mean, for that matter, once the health go, you can forget it. I don't care how much money you have. So thinking you're in all this great health, and next news, go to the doctor and you get a diagnosis. Just, be humble. Now, couple of things before Ayitza comes on. She should be calling me in about 10 minutes or so. It is Labor Day weekend for us here, because this is going to be my next podcast is going to be in this area. My challenge to parents as we go back to school here in the Northeast, because I know in the South they went back in August. They do that May-August thing. That would drive me silly, but I guess if I lived there, I'd have to do it. I'm so accustomed and always known nothing but out in June and back in September that for me to do the May-August thing would just seem weird. So I know some of the kids around the country went back to school in August because they got out in May. But for our kids and teachers up here, we get out in June and we go back in September, of which the staff, at least in the district I'm in, they'll be coming back on Tuesday, and the children will be coming back on Thursday. Staff will be there 5th and 6th. Children come back on the 7th. Parents, please make, and this is where my next podcast is coming from, please make education a priority in your home. You must do that. I don't care what race, background, income level, whatever you are, please make education a priority in your home. So, Mark, what do you mean by that? I mean, one, set up an environment that is educationally sound. I don't care. I mean, even if it's the kitchen table, because Mark, my kids, we don't have. No, you can clear a space at a certain time for your child to do his or her homework. Even if you have to shut everything down and everybody else go in another room because little whoever has to do their homework, give them that opportunity of space to do that. Or if they have to make a corner in their room on the floor. But set up some routines and time frames where homework must be done. Set up some reading time. Have the child read 15 to 20 minutes. A half hour is what they recommend. I recommend an hour, but I get it. I know there's a lot to do. but have some set reading time. Have a set bedtime. Your child should not be coming to school talking about they went to bed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I have 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders and 5th graders and 6th graders that come in tired and sleepy because they went to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. And they went to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning because they were playing video games. They were up playing Xbox. They were up playing whatever the latest game is. So come on, parents, you got to be parents. I get the friend thing, but you have to be parents. Along that same line, please do not give these kids everything they holler and ask for. You would be amazed at how many parents come in my office talking about, I give them everything they want. Oh, they have so much stuff. I give them every time they ask for something, I give it to them. Any game they want, I give them. Any Jordans they want, I give them. Anything. Please don't do that, because you are doing nothing but spoiling that child. You are spoiling that child. Don't do that. And then after you've done all that to get the behavior that you get, I've had a scenario and situation. The child was like in kindergarten, maybe 1st or 2nd grade at the time, had literally tore the main office and a classroom up. Little child. Even whenever, first off, the police had to be called on the child, and the child had the audacity to say, tell the police to shoot me. Child was, as we can say, off the chain. Received a suspension for his behavior, of which he should have received. And you know what the mother did? She left the school building and took him downtown and bought him a new pair of Jordans, a new pair of sneakers. Now, this child just received a 5 to 10 day suspension, and you walk away from there and you go buy him a $100+ pair of sneakers. What message did that send? That let that child know I can tear some stuff up and I'm going to be rewarded for it. That's the message it sent. I've had parents come in fussing and fighting with me about they're losing money on their job because they had to come into the school for their child. They had to come to the building for his or her child, because I don't call parents into the office just to say hi and chat. I don't call parents into the office just for the sake of calling them into the office. If I'm calling you into the office, your child did something. So you're not coming there for me. You're coming to the office for your child. So I've had parents come in. The school is going to pay for the money I lost. Hold it, stop. You came in because of something your child did. Now, once we start, as they say, peeling the onion back, once we start telling the story of what the child did, then the parent get quiet. And I let them know right off the bat. So let me tell you something. That money you were complaining about that you lost from having to take off from work to come here for your child, that needs to come out of something that you were going to buy for him or her. So if you had in your mind, of which I wouldn't buy that for no child, no sneakers that cost that much. But if you had in your mind to spend $150 on whatever the latest sneakers is, they wouldn't get that now, because I just lost X amount of dollars having to come in the office for their behavior. Or whatever the latest shirt or pants or shorts or t-shirt or tattoo or whatever the heck they buy now. Whatever that latest is, you just lost that. If I lost money coming off my job to come to school for misbehavior, you will not be getting that particular item, whatever it is, game, whatever. So parents, I'm saying all that to say, please be parents. Do not get them everything that they want. Set aside some quiet time, some homework time. Make sure they've done their homework. Check their book bags. We have kids walking out of the house with stuff in their book bags they don't even know is in there. We've had situations where people have been moving and they use the child's book bag as a part of the, something to carry stuff in. And they might have something there from the kitchen, like a knife or something like that in the book bag. Kid don't even know it's in there. Now comes to school with a knife in the book bag and is charged with having a weapon. And the kid's looking at it like, I didn't know it was in there. I didn't put it in there. I don't know. And the kid's telling the truth. So please check your children's book bags before they leave home. Check to see how your child is dressed before he or she leaves home. Again, you would be amazed at what I see kids coming to school almost naked. Not because they don't have, because it's a choice. I'm seeing 4th and 5th graders coming in with makeup on that would put some of our ladies of the night to shame. They're made up that well. So please do not let your child leave the house that way to come to school. And in your house, do not in front of your child be talking down the teachers, the principals, the school, the this, that, and the other. Because once you do that, the child does not have to respect that teacher. The child doesn't have to respect that principal because they've heard you tear them up at home. Oh, you don't have to listen to them. They don't know nothing. They don't buy your clothes. They don't do this. They don't do that. Well, apparently you're not either. So please, I need parents as we go into this school year, and I'm going to do a podcast on it. I may even take this piece of it to be the podcast. I need folks to be parents. I need education to be a top priority, whether it was priority for you or not. If you have a child, you have a school-age child, whether it was priority for you or not, make it a priority for your child, because any parent worth his or her salt want their children to go further than they went. I don't care. As far as I've gone, I still want my kids to do better if they want it. Now, I can't do it for them. They got to want it. Now, your child got to want it. But I still want them to go further than I've gone. And for my kids to do that in terms of all the experiences I've had, that's going to take a lot. But I still want it for them if they want it. And any parent worth his or her salt want their kids to experience more and go further than they went. I don't care how far they've gone. If I were to get a doctorate right now, I still would want my child to go get the doctorate and beyond, get 2 doctorates. Want them to go further than what I've gone. All right, so do that. Have a great school year as it's about to kick off for those here in the Northeast area. For those in the South who are already in school, make sure you're doing your best and do those things that I just talked about as well. I've been referencing a blog post. I'm not going to get a chance to talk about it because Ayitza will be calling in shortly, but it's called There Is a Difference Between Stupid and Ignorant. And maybe I will do a little bit of it while I have you here. If you go to thereadingcircleblog.blogspot.com, you can get to my blog. The blog is called The Critical Thinker. That's what it's called. The critical, and I named it that for a reason, because I don't necessarily want you to agree or disagree. I really don't care, but I do want you to think. I want to bring things to your attention to have you think. And that's what, for me, the critical thinker does. What I'll do is I'll take something that people generally run by, take for granted, don't have the time to think about, but I bring it to your attention. This is the case with this, because we use stupid and ignorant interchangeably, and they're not the same thing. All right. So the post says, this is another one of my Seinfeld-like posts wherein I'm sure no one has taken the time to really think about this. If you recall the show Seinfeld, the show mostly was about things we take for granted and never give much thought to until it is brought to our attention. Well, this post does that. For the most part, unwittingly, we use the terms stupid and ignorant, quote unquote, interchangeably, when in reality, they do not mean the same thing. When I started doing my research for this post, I found myself having to dig a little deeper than I had anticipated. Once I read the dictionary definitions of each word. You'll see what I'm referring to as you keep reading. The definition of stupid: having or showing a great lack of intelligence or common sense. The definition of ignorant: lacking knowledge or awareness in general, uneducated or unsophisticated. So now when I read that, knowledge and intelligence leaped at me from the respective definitions, as I know these two words are often used interchangeably as well. Hence my having to dig a little deeper. So I followed the same thought process. Let's take a look at the definitions of knowledge and intelligence. Knowledge: facts, information, and skills acquired by a person through theoretical or practical understanding of a subject. Intelligence: the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. If you notice, as I did in reading the definition, one who acts or is stupid lacks intelligence, while one who acts or is ignorant lacks knowledge. One who acts or is stupid lacks the ability to acquire, that's the key word, lacks the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills, while one who acts or is ignorant lacks facts. And I know my call is on the Aitza. Hang on, I'll be with you in 1 second. So when we call, so it says here, one who acts or is stupid lacks the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills, while one who acts or is ignorant lacks facts, information, awareness, and skills acquired by a person through experience or education. That's the difference. When we call someone stupid, or when someone is acting in a stupid manner, what we are saying is that he or she does not have the ability to acquire, apply knowledge and skills, versus someone who has the ability and is unaware or acts as he or she is unaware. Most of us are far more ignorant than we are knowledgeable about many subjects. Most of us are experts in one or two areas, sometimes maybe more if you're really gifted. I mean, folks have varying amount of gifts. That does not make us stupid. So the fact that you're ignorant about something does not make it stupid. Just because I do not know astrophysics does not mean that I am stupid. Most of us probably fall into the category of ignorant than stupid. We see and experience many stupid acts, stupid thoughts, and stupid words said on a daily basis. There are things that many of us see others do that we question ourselves saying, quote, now you can't tell me that he or she did not know better than that, unquote. We say to ourselves, quote, it seems to me that common sense would have told him or her not to do or say that, unquote. For those who are truly stupid, they never grasp reasoning, comprehension, judgment, and understanding. That's why you could have someone playing music in their backyards at 150 decibels at 11:30 p.m. at night and not understand why the neighbors are complaining or the police are called. Examples such as this could go on and on. Lastly, it's one thing to be ignorant, and it's another thing to be ignorant and just not care. Now, see, there's another difference. There are certain areas such as parenting, that's what I was just talking about, leadership and relationships. There are others, I'm sure, that while we begin as ignorant, we cannot afford to stay ignorant. Contrary to the old adage that ignorance is bliss, in many areas it is not, nor should it be. Being ignorant about something that you know you need to be aware of means that action must be taken. Intentional ignorance is costly. In 2017, with all of the technology and information that is available to us, there really is no excuse for anyone to remain ignorant in anything that really matters in life. I am not talking about a subject like astrophysics unless you intend to be an astrophysicist. I am talking about everyday life experience that we cannot afford to be ignorant in. Because of intentional ignorance, our children are running amok. Because of intentional ignorance, and we're going to talk about that in the 7 o'clock hour with Aitza. She's on the air with me. Because of intentional ignorance, our country is being run off of the rails. Because of intentional ignorance, our world is going to hell in a handbasket. When do we say enough? Nero is fiddling while Rome burns. So we really must take a look at who and what we call stupid compared with who and what we call ignorant, as they are two different meanings. One who is ignorant has the ability compared with one who is stupid, who does not have the ability. Something to critically think about. And that is from my blog post, The Critical Thinker. The title of that is There is a Difference Between Stupid and Ignorant. I encourage you to check it out. Again, it's the readingcircleblog.blogspot.com. The blog is The Critical Thinker. I also have a podcast that is now heard on a whole lot of different platforms. I am thrilled. I don't think I could be too much happier. It's available. The podcast is called The Marc Medley Show. The show is actually named after me, yours truly. That's MarcMedley, The Marc Medley Show. That's the podcast. On Saturday mornings, I do the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. And then I have the podcast, which is The Marc Medley Show. But that can be heard on iHeartRadio. That can be heard on TuneIn. That can be heard on Apple Podcasts. That can be heard on Wonder Radio. That can be heard on YouTube. I'm trying to remember all of them because now the list has gotten longer and longer. And also you can hear my music on Django as well as iHeart. I mean, I am thrilled to be on so many different platforms and on Spreaker. The podcast is on Spreaker as well. That's Spreaker. I invite you to subscribe and to follow all of them. I always say we need the numbers because, as you know, everything operates on numbers. So I really would appreciate that if you would subscribe or follow on one of them. I don't care which one, if not all of them. Again, because they're on Apple Podcasts, they're on TuneIn Radio, they're on iHeart, they're on Django, they're on YouTube, they're on Spreaker, they're on Wonder Radio. I mean, the list just keeps growing. Every time I do a search on one of the internet sites and I put in the Marc Medley Show, it comes up. So I am thrilled that it's being distributed that way. But again, commentary such as you've been hearing in this hour is what I do on the podcast. So there's the podcast, there's the radio show that we're doing right now, as well as the Marc Medley Show and the musical CDs. I put it on my social media sites this morning. I am seeking diligently to continue to build my audience and base. It's a little, it's little at a time, as long as we're moving forward.